Hello, and welcome to the Vintage Camper Trailer Bootcamp Online Summit. I'm Rob Merrill, the co-owner and builder at Trailer Magic, our vintage trailer reimagining and restoration business located in Carson City, Nevada. Today, I'll be discussing how to rebuild, restore, and repair a Hehr standard window. First, let me set up the camera. All right, so this is the window that we were going to be restoring on today. This is a Hehr standard window, and this is what most of them look like once you remove them. Is they're going to have shrunken gaskets. A lot of people will put silicone around to prevent them from leaking, and that's pretty much the whole window right there. So this window I have already pulled from the trailer so we can do it as a demonstration. When you unscrew this window from the trailer, you want to save the screws if you want to reuse them, or you might use new ones later. Let me just show you something real quick. On the inside of these windows, when you take them apart from your trailer, there will be screws underneath these trims, which has to be removed to be able to get the window away from the trailer. Otherwise, you're gonna just rip them. So let's get started on this window. First, let me try to get this back locked. They're a little difficult sometimes, okay? And so what we're gonna do first is clean off any of the old butyl. So this one has a little silicone on the window frame, but we'll clean that once we pull the gasket. But on the back side, this window has a little bit on the flange. There's a little bit of butyl tape, which you'll reinstall later, but to take it off, I just use a chisel. You're welcome to use a screwdriver. And a lot of times it just pops off like this is because it's old. And will just pop off. Let me just get rid of that real quick. All right, so once that's done, this part here, you're good to go. And now this would be the time that you're gonna clean your window and remove any dirt, grime, and you should decide if you want to polish them, and how you're gonna polish them or how clean they're gonna be is gonna be based on the patina of your trailer. This window came off of a trailer, which will go back on, that is keeping the original patinaed skin, so it will not get shined, buffed, or cleaned up much more than this. If you are doing a trailer that's gonna have new siding or maybe a fresh paint job, you might wanna take this to a deeper end and polish it with, there's many levels, but you could use steel wool with Mother's Cleaner. These two together, you dip the steel wool in here and just rub it through, and it shines. You can keep going. The longer you do it, the longer it'll take, but you'll get a better shine. So knowing that this is a Hehr standard window will help you choose the right gaskets for the from the Vintage Trailer Gasket website, sorry. So this, from their homepage, this is what you'll see, and you'll see up here where it'll say a Hehr standard 14, 18, 21. This is this window. It's not a clear view. And when you look here, you'll see the two gaskets that are required to reinstall this window. So from their site, you can get the gaskets and the screening as necessary. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start in this window. So we're gonna do the latch. It's gonna open up. We'll address this there later. So inside these windows are all these little screws, nuts, and bolts. Those are what we need to take off. So first, I'm going to take off the center one here, because we need to remove this latch so we can get this window pane off. So most of them generally come off pretty good. You might need a crescent wrench to work the bolt off that side, or the nut, I'm sorry. But you'll just take these off. Save these parts because you will be reinstalling these. They are important. So you pop that out. You have the nut and bolt set aside. Then this mechanism is free from the window. So to remove this pane, the ends of these windows have tabs on both ends. you will just grab your pliers and cautiously do this. You only get a couple bends on these before these tabs will break off. And once you've pulled the tab up, you pull the window to a 90 degree or so, and sometimes they come off nice, sometimes they're a little more difficult. And you have the two parts, window frame, window pane. So we're gonna start with the frame, save all parts. And so this gasket that you see on here, this black gasket, is what we need to remove. So a lot of times when you pull it, it breaks right off, but there's still the gasket on the back just because they're old and weathered. What I will do is with my chisel, we will just go underneath and just kind of, you know, wiggle your chisel, get this back off, because there is some adhesive on there from the factory when they put these on. Usually goes pretty simple and nothing too difficult. If they are being a little difficult, you can use a heat gun, warm them up a little bit, and they'll do their job just fine. This gasket here. This is just easier to take off once you have the window pane off. For cleaning these windows, you don't need to clean any further than this. You don't have to worry about this old residue back there. It really doesn't matter. So now on here, this is what's left. This is the screen that's for a Hehr standard, and we are not at this time going to replace this screen. It is not necessary, at least for this video. So what you have, if you're going to replace this screen on the inside here and there, you have to drill out those rivets, which are on the back side, of course. And then when this comes up, that means the screen is accessible, because the screen runs from edge to edge underneath this. You would take this off, lay a new screen, and then re-rivet this, or you could put nuts and bolts on there if they're short too. And then also at Vintage Trolley Gaskets, they sell this. This is a Hehr window screener. So like you see these spots here that are out, when you lay your fresh screen in, you would roll it this way and it would put a dent in it, and then you go to the side, and then when you push it, it pushes all the screening back into the slots on the edge. This type of screen does not get any of that rubber screening material. So, okay, so that's all we're gonna do with this piece right now. The rest of this frame looks good, not many dents, dings, so we're gonna leave this one go. We're gonna move to the window pane right now and take this apart. So this will take a couple minutes. What we have to do is we have to take off, there's 2, 4, 6, 8. There's 8 screws on here holding this window pane in place. The short Hehr standards do not have this trim on the sides, only in the top and bottom. Bigger windows have 4 pieces. So again, you're just gonna unscrew them with a screwdriver. You'll get lots of dirt. And then you're gonna also save all of these nuts and bolts as well, because you will be reinstalling them. Order that you take them off doesn't matter. They're just all the same. I will try to work quick here for y'all. And then remember on these, so this is the top hinge side right here with the hinge piece on it. And when you see this piece here, you'll see that there is a screw that's offset. It has to be shorter side up by the hinge when you reinstall it. Just something good not to forget. And this would be steps you'd want to take too if you're going to actually take this window and go to the point of a polish. You'll want to take all these parts off so you can polish each of them, because although they're inside the window, when the window's shut, you will see them. So you would want them to be just as shiny as the outside. And then you'll see this corner over here is kind of mangled. We will address that too. It's aluminum, so it repairs pretty simply. Two more. Yeah, so once we have all this off, we'll remove the glass, and then we'll get to some more cleaning. Okay, so that's, and sometimes these screws or the bolts get a little tight. If you push down on this trim, it has a pressure, then they'll pop out. So take out this piece. Top and bottom don't really matter. I mean, keep them to shape, as I guess, in order as best you can, but they're the same. Just get some of this extra dust off of there. This particular window does have, like I said, it has damage on this left side over here. So what I'll do with that is, you can use a regular hammer. I happen to have some of these, like automotive ones. So wherever you see bends, I'm going to have to go to the edge of my table. You're going to give it a little pound. You could even bend it by hand and make it straight again. Then once those are off, then the glass comes out. If this is broken, this is, you know, obviously the time to replace it. If it's plexiglass, I would consider replacing it, because these windows should be glass, you know, and it's a little dirty, but for this reinstallation, we're going to be okay with that. So this is the window frame with the gasket that's on it. So you can see how much it's shrunk, you know, way short on the edges. It's gapped over an inch there. This is the spots where people usually run silicone. Just take this gasket off. It's pretty much no good. Throw it away. This side here, we have a little dent on the frame itself. Same thing. You can push it by hand. It is aluminum. You can use a hammer, you know, and try to get it just to be in line where it's supposed to be. And then this particular spot is bad, so I'm going to have to use the edge of my table just to pound on that. And I think I'm going to be out of camera view for just a second. You know, so really I just set this edge like this on the table, pound it down flat, and it has to be pretty good. It does not have to be exact. If you need it to, work it a little bit more. You know, there was a couple pounds. That's pretty much exactly what you want it to be again. And sorry for all the dust in these windows. They're going to be very dirty that way. On this frame then, same thing. You don't want silicone around this edge, because that is where your rubber gasket needs to go. So again, I like using the edge of my chisel. It's hard, it's flat, it's solid, it's got a sharp edge. Be careful not to go out here and gouging, you know, because you don't want to put extra lines in the aluminum, because then you might have to polish it up better. But you're just going to go back, you know, a little bit. If you have to use the blade side, just cautiously, and try not to dig, because you just want to get rid of that residue silicone that someone put on there so lovely for us. You can just wipe it. There's a tiny amount on there. That's fine for this. Up here. You see the little bits of silicone coming off. It doesn't have to be perfect, especially for this trailer, because the patina is what they want, so we don't want to make anything too big, too shiny, and make it stand out like it's been repaired. So this window frame is good to go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to well, let me take a second here. Just dust this off. Sorry, it's just a little messy for me. Okay, so back to this window. We're going to put this window pane back together, and then we'll work on the frame. So the first thing we're going to do is put this gasket. When you went to the Vintage Trailer Gasket site, there's this trim here, which is, according to this is part number 0114RA. And this trim comes in black or gray. I prefer gray because it's more like the aluminum frame it is. This is not the same trim, but this is the black color. And some people do like black because it stands out. doesn't matter. It's the same gasket. And so once we go around, I like to start on the top. Actually, I should start on the bottom and go around. So the way that this is with this thin aluminum here and this gasket, this is the same gasket trim that would be used on a vintage Shasta with the front windows, where you see all the screws going around because they leak a lot. Those screws are part of it, but I'll show you when we put these on how they work the same, but it's the exact same system. So make sure your end is straight, and it does have the slot, and you're just gonna, you know, work it around, making sure it works best if you can keep it flat and not twisted, of course, so it goes back on. You go around your corners. So one thing to make sure you're doing on these corners is to make sure they're all the way back. And like I showed you, I guess I didn't, this stretches. You don't want this to be stretched. You want it to be just a loose fit on there. So when you put the window gaskets in, it fits better. The glass will seal up against it better, and there's less chance of it shrinking if you haven't already stretched it. So just work your way around this. And then we'll cut that. And then, but before we cut this length, we want to make sure that it's all the way back on the inside, and that we haven't pulled this out and that has cut the corner. You just, like I said, it's really important that these corners are back in place. And then when you cut it about not a 1/4 inch, but I would say at least an 1/8 inch long, as straight as you can. And you'll see that it's long, because that way when you push this in, you pull it back and it's going to keep pressure on there to try to help prevent that from gapping any longer. Okay, so we have that together. So on the reinstallation, this is the glass that's going to go back in it. So we'll flip it over. The glass, which, let me just try to wipe that a little bit more. I'll clean the glass better later for y'all. So this is just going to sit back in there, and I'll install it, but this will sit on the glass like that. So you have new gasket, you'll have good clean glass. Next is these 2 aluminum holders. So the bent side one was over here, which was, if you can remember, this one here. So this will go back on. This also has a slot underneath here, which has to rest over this. And then these holes will all align with those holes. Then you'll put your screws in. So putting that back down. Okay, so once that's down, use your outside edges and, you know, just reverse it, push everything in and on. You have your nuts and bolts. We don't want to tighten anything yet because we do have to tighten it all down to give it the pressure it needs to work properly. But for place holding, that's all we're looking for right now. And when you're tightening these in, you can do them by hand like I'm doing, or, you know, if you want to, put your screwdriver back out there, screw them a little bit. You'll feel this squeeze in, which is what it needs to do to be tight. Just don't get it too tight yet. Let's go ahead and quick do the other side. And most of these have aluminum nuts. So when you put these on, you'll see one side is hollow, the other side is solid. The solid side goes up against the aluminum frame, if you didn't notice that when you took them off. Okay, so we have these two in roughly, and you'll notice like when you're moving it around, these will slide. Just make sure you're kind of keeping an eye on those because we haven't put the pressure on to hold them in place yet. And then we mentioned earlier about this piece and making sure that this is up by the hinge side to make sure you get it in the right direction, or your window, you won't be able to hook your parts back up to your window. And again, same thing. Just got to line up the holes as best we can. Sometimes it's easier than others. Sometimes they just want to be stuck a little. Put that one on. Quick do these two. And you can see through here that they're aligned. Okay, now we're going to tighten them down better, but check the front, make sure your gaskets are all back up to where they need to be. And when you're tightening these, you want to push down on this rim, and you should be able to hold this aluminum screw. So push down and then just tighten this. And a lot of times that screw will just stay there how it is. And if need be, if it doesn't, you can use the pliers. And then once the centers are done, do the same with the outside. You can see when I push down how much that moves. You need that pressure to keep that window in place or it will leak. And make sure they're the same, you know, again, this one's pretty down. Crank them pretty snug because you don't want these moving. Go to the back side, repeat the same process. Do the middle one first. Make sure it's down. Edge ones, same thing. Push it down tight. And that one, make sure we're tight. All right, so there, this is done. These gaskets are all nice and tight. Windows in, it's all sealed up. This piece is ready to go, so we can bring it back to the window frame. And just opposite the way we took it off is you will see that this has a curly on it. That end does too. They don't necessarily go in flat. You have to find the angle that makes them work correctly. I've noticed depending on how bent these get, it can vary. Then just should go down pretty easily. And before you lock this tab, and these be careful because you only get 3 or 4 pulls and they're going to break off, is see that it's not too far left or right and the window functions. so we can shut this tab so the window doesn't come out. That's all it needs. Still works. Now from this side, actually I should have, hold on a second, because I know this one needs another repair. So this is what you don't want to do too many times. So on here, there is this aluminum piece. This one happens to have one of its tabs broke off. So when this sits in here, it also helps hold the screen down. But when it's in here, you can tell it's broken. So what I'm going to do is I do have a little screw that I'm going to see if I can. There's enough space right there where I think I can just drive one in there. Okay, well, I guess both sides are broken. Kind of a big deal because this keeps this in place. So we'll put one of these here. I didn't plan on them both being gone, so nut driver on one. These are the things you deal with these old windows. If these pieces break, you got to figure out what you can do to keep them working in the meantime. If you have a spare window you could take this piece off of, that would make it just as lovely. That works. Try to keep it as straight as we can. This is not working so well. It wants to spin off of there and fall. Well, for now, I'm going to have to look up and see if I can order one of these somewhere with the tabs. The two tabs would sit here, which help guide it, but I can't spend a lot of time trying to fix this at this time. But that would normally just be sitting on there with its tabs and you're good to go. So let's get this back together. Everything will still work. It's just a tighter guide is all. Shuts, close tab. Okay, so now once your window's back together, we have to put this mechanism back together. So you'll do this from the back side and you'll see that it has this tab. This tab locks into that hole, so you'll know which way to mount. This has to be like this, so this will lock in there. So you know this piece has to go through, and once it goes through, if I can show that the best here, but it has to be bolted back into this spot. So we'll line up the holes. Got lucky that just happened to work. Put the bolt back on and tighten it. This one you can tighten pretty good. The metal that holds it is not aluminum, it's steel, so it doesn't bend as much. So now you have the window that goes back on and locks. So we know that this functions as it's supposed to. Now, once you have this window pane back on, it would be time to put on the gasket that goes around these points, which is this gasket. It has this track, and back onto our guide, that is this part right here, Hehr standard. It's that piece there. There's only 2 gaskets on these windows, so it is kind of hard to get them wrong. So what we do, I'm left-handed, so I'm going to start from this side, is make sure again your edges cut square. This is all pretty clean. This fits over that groove you'll see in a second here. So when we have this on, you have your new gasket on top and the back of it will be right there. So what we have to do is put something here to hold these from falling because it's backwards the other way. These have to get 45 cuts, 45 degree angles, so it can each 45, so it's actually a 90. So when we do this, it's not bunched up there. So you can freeform it, you can guess, you can put the back of a square onto there, but what I'll do when I do mine is when I have it up where I want it, I'll take my cutters and I'll snip it right to this. Let me show you up on here. There's a center line. I will just snip it only halfway because that's all the further you want to go on that. And that'll tell me where this has to go. So now I have that snip. So I have that hole. I can guess and I can cut each end. You could put up something that's square and hold it. Let me put this over here, over the cut, so you know you're at 45 degree angle. And I did find this tool, which I don't know what it's called, but it's got a little V on it, so it cuts a 45. So if you take this, it won't totally cut this gasket, but it helps. And you take where your center line is, and you center it inside this punch, is what I'm going to call it. Give it just a punch, so you'll see it put lines in there, but it didn't totally, well, cut a lot of it off. Then I have a guide. Then I'll come through with my other snippers, and I will just finish the cut. That gets you a pretty good 45 degree angle without too much bulking. So let's test that out. So put that one on there. And it's up. So now when I take this, when I take this long piece and I'm coming over across the bottom, you can see it makes a pretty good 45. And then what I do is on the back, you'll see that it's got a little bit of a pucker. You can't have that. Just take your cutters, just cut that little pucker off. That's all you need to do. And that is good to go. And we'll do the same thing, run it across. I'll cut my line. About halfway. Well, let me do one of each. Let me just cut this one freehand because you can. Just know, you're looking for 45 and 45 to be 90, so you can eyeball that. And it only has to be pretty close anyway. It's a gasket. So that's off. Put this corner back on. We make this corner. And it's going to be almost just as good as that one. Like I said, it's a trial and error. For the length, look at where this runs up because you want it to hit right up to that spot, the back of the trim, so it covers up everything. Give it a cut. That wasn't a good cut. Let me cut it all the way through. And then stick it on here first and let it snake back in so it goes underneath that flap. And that's the gaskets. And because I cut it, there is still, again, there's a little bit of a pucker back there, which I'm trying to show so you can see. I just hold my corners tight to how they're supposed to be, push down, and just cut it off. That way it's sealed pretty good. So once those are on, you can test the window again, pull your lever through. Hehr windows, when you push this lever down, are pressured. That's what keeps them tight. So when you push this down, you push it down, it'll go into that lever. And pretty much that's it. This window is good to go for installation. Before we get ready for the screws, the only part that gets butyl on these windows is this part of the hinge back here. Don't butyl behind the plastic, don't silicone behind the rubber. I'm sorry, not plastic, rubber. This is what seals up against your trailer, and that's all that it should need. And for your butyl, with your special butyl scissors, again, you will just cut that off. Make sure we're long enough over the edges just a little bit. Make sure that that's on nice and good. This is why I like to use the, oh, I didn't probably cover butyl. So butyl tape and butyl putty is a different thing. You can do this in white. They have gray. They have 3/4 inch. This is the 1 inch stuff. I like the 1 inch because when it's on, there's enough here to trim off or, you know, use as extra. If you do 3/4 inch, I guess maybe you don't have to do as much work, but the 1 inch will always cover no matter what the problem might be. So then we'll peel this and get it ready for installation. And another thing, between butyl tape, butyl putty, butyl, some people like to refrigerate it and some don't. I am on the side of not refrigerating it. I've heard people say that the putty gets so hot that it gets drippy and runny. I don't have that problem. I don't know who does, but apparently some people do, and they keep it in the refrigerator. But when this is at this temperature, it's got enough stick to do what it's supposed to do, where if it's cold, it's not going to stick to the trailer or the window as well, and it's going to be hard. So when it melts, to me it seems like it would thaw, like, and it would get thinner, and you'd be able to have to redo all your screws to push it to actually ooze this out, because when it's hard and frozen, it's like a rock. It doesn't have any give to it. So that's the story on those. These screws didn't have any that were stainless. They were the original hex heads. So when your hex head screws come out rusty, thin, deteriorating, you're going to be looking at wood rot in your framing around your window, and most likely other places as well, because it starts at the windows and works down. So never reuse screws like these. You can buy new hex heads, or you can use stainless steel screws that don't rust, which is a much better deal. So we're going to take this window to the trailer and quick do an installation on it. And so I'm going to hand the camera over to Michelle, since she is helping me, and she'll follow me. These screws. Bring over my ladder, because this window's too tall for me. If she can zoom in. So there's these windows happen to be, this window happens to be through the S joint, the S lock on the siding. And when you install these over that gaps them out that much further. And so this one I had already cut. This white mark here is where the window sat before. So what I'm gonna do is just take my Dremel tool. I'm gonna cut that little bit off, so when I put the window against the siding, it goes against the siding and doesn't stop on this joint. So it's like just a second. Okay, once that's cut, just give it a couple lifts and pulls, and it's aluminum, it breaks right off. Now this window's ready to install. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the window in, test it. Don't push the butyl tight yet, because you don't want to. So you'll see where the movement is. Make sure you're centered in it all. Push the window in a little. And so for the top, I will use my stainless steel screws. They're number 8 by 3/4 is the size that I like to use. Usually works good for everything. So these windows, if it can go in or not, you only want to drive these screws, not over tighten them, until you see the butyl start to squish out, then you know you're tight enough. And you don't really need to go any tighter. You can hear when it gets tight too, and you can see that it has mounted up, which means it's pushed it out. Later, hold on. Let's say you let this sit for a day or two. You'll come and clean this extra butyl off with a putty knife or a scraper, whatever tool you like. Clean that off, and then if you want, you can retighten these. You shouldn't need to. I wouldn't be paranoid about it, but that's just the way I do it. If you need to retighten them, just don't over tighten them to where the screws spin, because then you strip out the wood and nothing's holding your window in any longer. So this window, once you get this in, the finished installation of this window, which you can keep up there for a second. I didn't unlock the window. All right, you have to unlock the window so you can get the pane open. And when you do this, I think I showed in the beginning, on these sides, there are screw holes. You want to put the screws in those, and that holds the bottom. There's also screws on the bottom. I prefer to use, these are called lath screws compared to my stainless because of the head height. This head height is much higher. This is pretty flat, which lets this gasket sit flatter. Some of the bigger windows actually have holes in the sides of these frames, which you can use, but these little ones don't. And so what you want to do as best you can is, you'll see that there's a hole. Usually there's always a hole by the center because that's where all the pressure is. You want to peel this gasket back and kind of push it up in the back so it doesn't scooch down. And when I put in my screws, I angle down so I can get the bottom of that gasket. And then it grabs, and you can see it. Well, you have to adjust these as you go, like this side here. And then you would just do the next screw. This one came out too far, so I do have to remove it back just a little because the metal's too tight to the trailer and I can't get the gasket back on. But that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be snug and tight up there like that. You know, and then it sits tight. You know, you got to do the bottoms and then the two sides. Let me just put another one in for y'all here. So again, if you can see in here, pull this back, pushing the back in so the gasket stays snug. And then the screw you want to grab is back out here as possible. And then it seals. And of course, you're going to do all the nice close the window to show. So there's this window tight. All these are tight. This is tight. Well, this one's, I'll screw these in later. But this is tight where these screws are. This plastic or gasket is tight against the trailer. You don't want to do any siliconing around this. It's not meant for that. It should work on its own. So let's head back. And so after a couple days, clean off the extra putty, re-screw it if you think necessary. The weather where you're at will affect whether or not it oozes quick. It doesn't at all or whatever. So that's about it for restoring your Hehr standard windows. Please look. So let's see what else. So when you're restoring them, so I do have other videos that are going to be coming during this online summit. So please take a look out for those. I'll be doing one on a Hehr standard window. And I also do a little seminar on how to determine if a trailer is worth restoring to you. And if you need any more help or interested in repair, restoration, or vintage trailer design work, you can find us at Trailer Magic on Facebook or Instagram, or on our website at trailermagicnevada.com. I'm Rob, my wife is Michelle. My phone number at the shop here is 775-287-5318. Thank you very much for your time, and we will see you out camping or at a rally soon. Have a great day.